The Lamy 2000 was first introduced in 1966, and it was drawn up by legendary industrial designer Gerd A. Mueller, who previously had become famous for designing the Braun razor. With the introduction of this pen, it established a new design language for the Lamy brand, which is a very utilitarian look, and this particular pen has become synonymous with the Bauhaus style of design and architecture, which uses very few flares and flourishes and embraces the mantra of form follows function. The pen is primarily made out of a brushed black polycarbonate known as Macrolon, and over the years it has been introduced in a few special releases for certain anniversaries in amber and blue, and it's also available in a stainless steel finish, which I also reviewed on this channel. The top finial is mostly flat with a very subtle dome shape, and it features a very high degree of polish. That finial is separated from the cap with a single recessed groove, and then we have a trapezoidal shaped stainless steel clip with a brushed finish. On one side it reads Lamy and nothing on the back. And underneath we can see Germany and the number 2 denoting the tool that was used to make this pen. And in doing so, I am demonstrating that it is a spring-loaded clip, making it extremely functional. The cap has a tapering profile widening down, and there is no cap band or markings at the bottom. And the cap pulls off to reveal a 14-karat gold semi-hooded nib. I have this one in a fine, but it's available in a wide variety of other sizes, and the markings for the sizes are underneath this grip section. On the back, we can see a black plastic feed, and at the top of the grip section, we have a crescent-shaped cutout with a hole in the middle to allow ink to be drawn into the pen. The grip section has a tapering profile, and it's made out of brushed stainless steel. Towards the back of the grip section, we have a bit of overmolded Macrolon, which makes for a pretty seamless transition into the barrel, with the exception of 2 little ears, which are part of a spring to help hold the cap in place. The barrel then starts with an ink window, which consists of a series of clear slots, and I do currently have this pen inked, so you can see how effective that ink window is at showing you your ink level. The barrel is then straight to about this location, at which point it starts to taper down to the end finial, and the end finial is made out of the same brushed Macrolon as the rest of the pen, so it's a pretty seamless transition. If I give that finial a twist, it suddenly becomes much more apparent that it's a separate piece, and it also doubles as a piston knob. On the bottom of the pen, we have a flat edge with a metal cap, which matches the rest of the trim. In the hand, the pen has nice heft, and it is balanced with a center of gravity towards the front of the pen, which makes for a very comfortable note taker. I will note that my fingers do rest right on those ears, which initially I found a little bit bothersome, but over extended use, I've learned to embrace those ears because they help me orient the nib. Also, because of the shape of this grip section, you can easily hold the pen in multiple locations comfortably. The cap posts securely and deeply. It makes for a very attractive pen when it's posted. And when it's posted, the balance is just about perfect right near the crook of my hand, and it makes for a very comfortable writing experience. However, it's important to note the cap does post on the piston knob, so if you were to twist this cap, you will start to expel some ink. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Lamy 2000, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we get into the disassembly of the Lamy 2000, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other fountain pens. Up top, we have the Pilot Custom Heritage 92, which is the only piston-filling fountain pen that Pilot makes, and we can see in its cap form it is just a little bit shorter than the Lamy 2000. Just below that, we have the Jinhao 80, which takes a lot of design inspiration from the Lamy 2000. However, instead of using brushed Macrolon, it features grained injection molded plastic, and rather than using a piston filling system, it uses a cartridge converter filling system. Just below the Lamy 2000, we have the Lamy CP1, which is another fountain pen designed by Gerd A. Mueller, and it uses a lot of the same design language as the Lamy 2000. It's a matte black pen with brushed stainless steel accents. However, instead of being a piston filler, it uses a cartridge converter system, and it's also a pretty slim tubular shaped pen. And just below this, we have the Parker 45, which is another pen that was designed in the 1960s, and the Lamy 2000 was really a response to this along with the Parker 51, which was gaining a lot of traction at the time. This pen is more of a torpedo-shaped pen. It has similar tapering end finials with flat edges, and it is a little bit shorter and more narrow than the Lamy 2000. Also, rather than using a piston filling system, this again uses a cartridge converter system. Of the pens on the table, the middle three have spring-loaded clips, the outer two have bent metal clips. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. All caps pull off with the exception of the Pilot Custom Heritage 92, which has a screw-off cap. And in their uncapped forms, all pens are about the same length. The Parker 45 is just a little bit longer than the rest. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. The Pilot Custom Heritage 92 has a very traditional shape, fully exposed 14 karat gold nib, and then a grip section that's also pretty traditional in shape with a flare out at the top, followed by a tapering profile to threads that are smooth to the touch. The Jinhao 80 has a stainless steel nib, which is very much in the Lamy Safari style, and it is swappable with Lamy Safari nibs. We then have a flare out at the top of the grip section, which is there to hold the cap in place, and then the grip section itself has a tapering profile to a metal band. The Lamy 2000 we just looked in great detail. It has a semi-hooded 14 karat gold nib with a tapering grip section that's made out of brushed stainless steel. The Lamy CP1 has a 14 karat gold nib at the moment, but it came with a stainless steel nib, and this one, just like the Jinhao 80, is in the same style as the Lamy Safari. The grip section is made out of plastic, and it's fairly straight with ribs that give you good grip. And then the barrel is made out of brass with a matte black finish. And the Parker 45 is the only other pen on the table that has a semi-hooded nib. It's part of a nib unit that unscrews for easy swapping. And then the grip is fairly narrow and it has a tapering profile to a metal band. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post securely. The CP1 has the most shallow posting cap and it makes it the longest pen when it's posted. And in contrast, the Parker 45 has the deepest posting cap and it's the shortest pen posted. The rest of the three pens are about the same length and they have very securely posted caps. To disassemble the Lamy 2000, no tools are required, but you might need something thin to use as a poker. And here, I'm just using a simple cocktail straw. The cap pulls off, and if we take a look inside, at the bottom we can see a plastic cap liner, but that's captured by leaf springs, so there isn't really an easy way to take it out. For regular cleaning and maintenance, I would just recommend running this under warm water, or perhaps soaking the entire unit in some mild detergent. The section unscrews from the barrel, and on the back of the section we can see the spring that acts as a clasping mechanism, and that just pulls right out. And then for the nib and feed, that can be pushed from the front to be pulled out of the back. At the back of the feed, we have a little O-ring. That's not there for sealing, it's just there to act as a spacer, so I'm going to just leave it in place. And then here we can see the nib in more detail. At the bottom, we have an F for fine, 585, denoting a 58.5% gold content, and Lamy. On the back, it's held in place with two little ears. We're going to grab those ears and give it a pull. And then for the barrel with the piston unit, unscrew the piston knob. Once you get to the bottom of the barrel, you're going to continue unscrewing the piston knob and you will hear and feel some clicks. Pretty soon, the piston knob will come out along with a plastic key. And now we're going to grab our poker tool. We'll push the piston from the front, and soon the rod will come out the back. The rod does have quite a bit of pressure buildup, so it takes a bit of force to pull this out. And now we have the rod with a sleeve, and that sleeve can be pulled right off. And at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, let's start with our rod and the sleeve. The sleeve has a slight tapering shape to it. You're going to want to keep the smaller diameter towards the head of the piston. And then we're going to insert this into the back of the barrel. Next, we'll grab our piston knob and the key. On one side of the key, there's a step down, and that has a little ridge on one side. That ridge grabs onto slots that are inside this knob. And then we are going to slide this entire thing into the barrel and give it a clockwise turn. As you get towards the bottom of the threads, you are going to feel some resistance and clicks. And now the piston should be fully functional. Perfect. And then as for the front of the pen, we're going to grab our nib and our feed. Again, the nib has two ears which line up to the feed. Simply line those up and push it in. There is a little ridge at the back of the top of the feed to make sure that the nib doesn't go too far. We'll then grab our grip, and on the bottom of the feed we can see a channel. That channel aligns with a ridge that's on the bottom of the grip section. So we'll line those up. And if you feel like the nib isn't quite going in, just simply rotate the feed a little bit until it slides all the way in. And then we have our leaf spring. And at the bottom of the grip, we can see there are two cutouts. Those cutouts are for the ears. So we'll just line that up. And then the slit in the spring unit, it can be oriented on the bottom or the top of the grip. It doesn't matter. We'll then reattach this to our barrel. And lastly, our cap. And now we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Lamy 2000, today I selected Sailor Yamadori, which is one of my favorite teal inks. Take the cap off the bottle and the pen. We'll extend the piston rod all the way down. Put the nib into the ink and rotate the piston clockwise to draw ink into the pen. In order to get a full fill, I'm going to expel ink by rotating counterclockwise, and then rotate it clockwise one more time to bring ink back into the barrel. Looks like a nice full fill. We'll go ahead and wipe off our nib. Cap up our pen and our ink. And we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Lamy 2000. Cap pulls off, and I am going to post it. And today we are writing with a 14 karat gold fine nib. And it's a beautifully tuned nib. It's smooth, it's wet, it is fairly stiff for a gold nib, and it also provides you a bit of flair because the tipping material actually has a bit of an architect's style. And an architect's style tipping material is narrow, and looks something like this if you're looking at the pen under a loupe. This is the case for Lamy 2000's extra fine and fine nibs. They produce a fairly wide cross stroke and a fairly narrow up and down stroke. It is subtle to see, but it is there. And then if you get a medium or a broader nib than that, you have the reverse, which is considered a stub. And again, it kind of looks like this if you're looking at the tipping material. And that will produce a wide up and down stroke and a narrow side to side stroke. Again, it is fairly subtle, but it does add a little bit of flair to your pen. Our ink, again, is Sailor Yamadori. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. You can push out maybe a little bit of line variation, but it is a very stiff 14 karat gold nib. And for reverse writing, very scratchy, but the feed pretty much kept up just fine. I would not recommend this for reverse writing because I think you're just sacrificing your writing experience. And honestly, I don't think it's really much of a thinner line. I guess it is maybe a little bit thinner. So, what do I think of the Lamy 2000? I'm a huge fan of this pen, and if you watch this channel, that should not be a surprise to you. I think the design is extremely timeless, as well as iconic at this point, and it's very well thought out. I love the brushed finish of this pen. It gives you a nice, good grip, and the material has a warmth to it that is a little bit hard to describe. Also, that brush texture was applied after the pen was fully assembled, which means that the grains actually line up between the different components. So that's a really nice attention to detail and really good design for manufacturing. Also, the ink window is extremely well integrated into the pen. Again, it features the same brushing that we see on the rest of the pen body. And what that does is when it is filled with ink, it almost becomes invisible, which is a pretty cool trick. And the design going down to the nib is really fluid and seamless, and it looks like a very well integrated pen. Even all the way down to the crescent cutout at the front of the grip section. That crescent cutout kind of mirrors the shape of the nib, and it actually is functional. It allows you to write with this pen at more extreme angles. And in terms of capping, it does a great job at sealing off the nib. I find that this pen is one of the most reliable pens that I have in my collection. I can leave it for multiple months, come back to it, and the nib is still wet. And speaking of this cap, I love the clip. The clip is very understated and simple, and yet it's extremely functional with this spring-loaded hinge in the back. And then lastly, the piston filler is fantastic. It's smooth, it's effortless to operate, and it's really easy to disassemble and reassemble without requiring any special tools, and there's no real trial and error with making sure all of the components are lined up properly. Now, this is one of my favorite pens, but is it the perfect pen? No, absolutely not. I think that there's certainly room for improvement, and I actually have quite a bit for this model. I would start off with the nib itself. The tipping material on the nib, as I discussed, is pretty unique. It has either an architect style grind or a stub style grind depending on the size that you select. And that's great. It gives you a nice flair to your writing, but at the same time, a lot of people are going to find some trouble with this nib because it is a little bit picky as to how much you rotate it while you're writing. I wish what Lamy would consider is offering this with a standard round tipping material and maybe offering unique stub and architects as options. Also, another issue that I have with this nib is the fact that you can't see the nib size. There are many people who buy multiple Lamy 2000s and they don't know if they've picked up the medium, the broad, or the extra fine until They look either closely at the nib or they start writing. What I think Lamy should have done is maybe put a little stamp on the feed in order to designate the nib size, although honestly that also would open up the issue of having to replace your feed if you are swapping in a different nib. And the steel gripping material I really love. However, it does confuse me a little bit why Gerd A. Mueller decided to make this part stainless steel rather than any other part of the pen. This part is what you grip the most, and the stainless steel is just cool to the touch, whereas the rest of the Macrolon is warm to the touch. So it's a little bit discomforting. Also, the overmolded portion at the back, I think that's a really nice design feature and it makes for a seamless design. But at the same time, I have experienced cracking in this area on the pen because it is a thinner material wall stock. And I think what maybe would have been better is if they took the stainless steel and carried it all the way to the barrel of the pen and maybe even reinforced the barrel of the pen with a ring of stainless steel. That would have provided a lot more structural stability. And at the same time, introducing the ring at the bottom of the barrel could offer you a different clasping mechanism and allow you to get rid of these ears. And working our way back, the ink windows are really beautifully integrated and they function at least in the sense of telling you whether you have ink in the pen or not. But you can't really tell what your actual ink level is. So I wish these ink windows were a little bit longer in order to actually see some body of ink. And then as we work our way towards the back, I love the piston knob and I think that it's a beautifully concealed unit. But at the same time, the fact that the cap posts on it and you have the risk of possibly actuating the piston, that does concern me. Though I will say that it does take quite a few turns before you actually start seeing ink coming out of the pen, but I would still consider that somewhat of a design flaw. And then with regards to the color of this pen, I have nothing wrong with it. I think it's very professional looking, but I think it would also be nice if Lamy introduced this in multiple colors because there are many people that like to mix and match their inks with their pens. And lastly, probably my biggest gripe with this pen is the fact that it retails for about $279 and it's the only piston filling fountain pen that Lamy makes. I think it makes sense for Lamy to take a look at this beautiful piston unit and put it into a more affordable pen, something that's under the $100 price point. And I think that would be a huge seller and really disrupt the market altogether. But overall, I am a huge fan of this pen. This is one of my favorite models, and I did recently rank it as my top pen in my collection. It's a beautiful design that balances the utilitarian aspect of a pen with a minimalist design, and it looks professional, but at the same time, it's not boring, and I can tell that every little detail of this pen was thoroughly thought out. And at this point, it has become a true icon with a design that has inspired multiple generations and really continues to this day. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.